Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. My name is Stephanie Bree. I am a transgender woman and I talk about all things horror. And today I'm tackling the somewhat forgotten, I would say, early 90s Michael J. Fox driven horror comedy, The Frighteners. I am going to be honest with you. I never knew this movie existed until recently. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I was, plugged into horror at the time. I was exploring everything, and this movie somehow went under my radar. I have to mention that because as I review this movie, I want to be very clear, there's no nostalgia here. I'm not blinded by nostalgia, so if I say positive things about it, it isn't because I grew up with it. I literally watched it for the first time 2 or 3 weeks ago. I didn't know what this was. Every time I would look on Netflix or Amazon or wherever and I would see The Frighteners, just based on the poster alone, knowing nothing about this movie, I automatically assumed it was in the Fright Night franchise, which, spoilers, if you haven't seen that video yet, I'm not a tremendous fan of. So I never knew that this movie existed, so one day I just decided to give it a shot. As soon as I saw Michael J. Fox was in it, I knew I was in for trouble. Don't get me wrong, I love Michael J. Fox when he's doing a comedy. But when he's in a horror movie, not so much. Now, I have mixed feelings about this movie, and I want to get into it a little bit. Because this is not a horror comedy, and this is not a comedy horror. This is two movies in one. You have a comedy for 45 minutes, and then you have a horror movie for 45 minutes. And it does actually blend the two well. Really well. The transition from comedy to horror is seamless. And you don't see it coming. Because you spend the first 45 minutes of this movie in a straight up comedy. It's fucking Who Framed Roger Rabbit meets Casper meets Beetlejuice. You know, it's not fucking deadly or serious or scary at all. It's got hints at there's some type of evil force going around killing people and taking their souls or whatever. And there's a couple of red herrings. You have Michael J. Fox, who's a psychic investigator, who is kind of comedic, but also tragic. We'll get into that without getting into the spoilers too much. I'm going to try my best not to spoil this movie because I actually thought it was a fun movie. So when I get to the end of this video, you're going to be scratching your head. Because I know, based on how I'm talking about it, it sounds like I grew up with this movie and I'm blinded by nostalgia, but I'm not. I just watched it for the first time 2 or 3 weeks ago. However, I have to point a few things out. The comedy section of this movie doesn't work for me. It really doesn't. It is a pure straight it's a fucking, it's a fucking Jim Carrey movie for 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden, it's a legit horror movie. And I mean a legit, scary, bloody, violent, terrifying horror movie for the last 45 minutes. And that transition is seamless because it doesn't feel jarring at all. So, I want to say the first 45 minutes, just skip it. Just fast forward. Fucking eat your popcorn, have a smoke, fucking drink your whatever you drink, Twitter. And then, when it gets to the morgue, when he goes into the ghost mode, when Michael J. Fox, spoilers, becomes a ghost to finish off the now we learned who the killer is, and I'm not going to spoil it because there are some red herrings. Once we know who the killer is, and he has to confront the killer, now we've got a movie. Now, the second half of this movie, I'm alright. Fucking finally, you got my attention, goddammit. God-awful special effects. The special effects in this movie look worse than Casper. 1996, 1995. You know, the one with Christina Ricci and the bullshit fake Ghostbusters bit reference. You know which movie I'm talking about. Bill Pullman. You know which movie I'm talking about. This movie looks worse than that. This movie makes that look like an ILM masterpiece. That's how god-awful the visual effects are in this movie. I love CGI. I will defend CGI to the death. I am one of those CGI apologists. I really am. The CGI was a mistake in this movie. And I mean a fucking mistake. It looks like a fucking tech demo for Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. Is how god-awful the effects are in this thing. It does not look like Hollywood caliber special effects. And we already had The Abyss and Terminator 2 by the time this movie came out. So CGI was already, more capable than this. Let's just say. The story, what very little story there is, because it's kind of all over the place, it isn't really so much a story as a bunch of vignettes all strung together. Just bits strung together. Michael J. Fox getting his tie stuck in the garbage disposal. Michael J. Fox tripping over, ottomans at the fancy rich people party. Michael J. Fox crashing his car into some dude's, garden gnome, and the dude wanting to kill Michael J. Fox for wrecking his garden. Shit like that. It's just bits. It's 45 minutes of bits. There's no fucking story at all. None at all. There's no characters. There's no plot. It's just 45 minutes of bits. Ghosts doing bits. And that's bullshit, and it pisses me off, and I'm just like, God damn it, get on with the fucking movie. Now, the only reason why I watched it to the end is because I made a rule that once I start a movie, I finish it. Because there have been a couple of instances. I'll give you an example. What was it? That fucking Hallmark horror movie that everybody was gushing over back in the holiday season. It's a Wonderful Knife or some bullshit. Like, I couldn't finish that fucking movie. It was so goddamn stupid. I couldn't fucking finish it. I got a lot of shit for that, because it's like, how can you review the movie if you didn't finish it? It's like, alright, fair enough. I'll go back and revisit that movie. I will. I'm just not doing it right now because that movie was painfully dumb. And I couldn't finish it. This movie was painfully dumb for 45 minutes, and I was like rolling my eyes, shaking my head, just, gasping for air. I was just like, God damn, what did I get myself into? And then they flip a switch. Somebody in the back flipped the switch that said bad movie, good movie. And then once they flip the switch, all of a sudden you're watching a good movie. All of a sudden, there's a plot out of fucking nowhere that wasn't there before. All of a sudden, there's a villain that wasn't there before. All of a sudden, there are stakes that weren't there before. It's like the first 45 minutes of the movie was supposed to be like the hook in the teaser trailer, and it just ran on for 45 minutes. And then when they finally got to the movie, they're like, oh shit, we're out of time because, Marvel hasn't taken over the universe yet. And movies aren't 3 hours long yet. So they're like, yeah, we've only got 45 more minutes to wrap this shit up. Let's get serious now. And then all of a sudden they get serious. And I mean legit, like, scary. The effects look good all of a sudden. It's like they saved all their money for the back half of this movie, which is like a really stupid fucking thing to do. And somehow, in the span of the second half of the 45 minutes, they managed to tie up all the loose ends that you didn't even realize were loose ends because it was just 45 minutes of vignettes. And you're like, maybe they were onto something, and they just didn't know how to get from A to B. They just sort of zigzagged through the park and then ended at the arena where the rock concert was going on, and they got to see Kiss. But, like, they could have walked off a pier and landed into the fucking lake the way this movie was going. Things I like about this movie. Michael J. Fox. You put him in a movie, I'm going to watch it, even if I end up not liking it. You know, I didn't like Teen Wolf that much. I like it as a comedy, hate it as a horror movie. But it's fun. I'll watch it. Secret of My Success, you know, it's got some pseudo-incest, but you know what? It was the fucking 80s. You know, it's rich people, you know. I mean, you know, the fucking British royals are all fucking their cousins. So what are you going to do about it, you know? Back to the Future, God's gift to humanity. One of the greatest fucking films ever made. So yeah, Michael J. Fox, you put him in a movie, alright, I'm in. Everybody else in this cast are the B-movie equivalent of somebody else. You're like, I know that guy. Oh, no, he just looks like the guy I know. I know her. Oh, no, she just looks like the girl I know. That's everybody else in this cast. Literally everybody else is just looks like someone you know, but they're not nobody you know. Nobody in this movie besides Michael J. Fox is anybody you remember or recognize or have seen in anything else. They're just bit actors that probably walked on, you know, they were probably just people, like tourists, touring the Universal lot, and somebody handed them a prop and said, here, say this stupid line that makes no sense and then run into the wall. Okay, sure, why not? Here's $100, have a nice day. That's how this movie feels to me. It feels like they weren't even making a movie. Like, I don't know. It just feels like so disjointed. It had no fucking direction at all. It almost feels like two different directors made this movie. It feels like they had, I don't know, John Landis or fucking John Hughes do the first half, and then they brought in like Tobe Hooper or fucking Wes Craven or somebody to do the second half, and it's like, okay, where were you 45 fucking minutes ago, dipshit? Now, what about my overall thoughts of the movie? I went into this review 12 minutes ago expecting to give it a rent. Because it's so disjointed, it pisses me off. But my review is actually, this is a buy. And the reason for that is, if you can suffer through the first 45 minutes, or actually like the slapstick, if that's your stick, if that's your thing, if you can stomach the slapstick for 45 minutes to get to the horror movie hidden underneath, you got a good movie. It's just you've got like 45 minutes of a good movie. You got to sit through 45 minutes of bullshit to get to. So yeah, I'll recommend it as a buy because it's worth checking out. And, you know, maybe if I had seen it when I was 8 years old, I would have loved it. I would have probably ranked this as the greatest movie I've ever seen if I saw it when I was 8 years old, when it came out. But I didn't. I saw it at 41 years old, and I'm like, I don't know, jaded by, you know, life and death and loss and love and everything else. So, you know, this movie doesn't have the, you know, it doesn't have the nostalgia for me that it should have had I watched it when I was a kid, and it doesn't have the charm of something like Night of the Creeps that I can watch for the first time and still fall in love with because it was like a legit fun-ass movie. So yeah, go ahead and check it out, The Frighteners. Just let me warn you straight up, the comedy is goofball. And I mean fucking, it's fucking Jim Carrey levels of fucking comedy. In the middle of a actually legit horror movie once you get through the first 45 minutes. Which is mind-boggling to me because, like, it's so weird. It's like two fucking movies. This should have been an anthology. And then it would have been like, yeah, the first story sucked, but the second story owned. So I don't know. I don't know who the fuck to blame for this shit. But it's still worth a watch.